What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 73 of Lobbing Scorchers. This is Ari Lilienwall, and I'm coming at you with a solo pod this evening. Noah, unfortunately, couldn't make it tonight. He's got something called a job that he works at or some such nonsense, but he was working late all week in all seriousness, and he was working late tonight. And I decided to just run a one-man show because I really wanted to get this one out with enough shelf life before these games on Saturday. So I'm recording this late on Thursday night solo. Got a playoff series dub pod for you as the Seattle Sounders have advanced to the Western Conference semifinals after another penalty kick shootout victory over the Houston Dynamo. So I'm going to break that down in our game review. I'm going to hit our agenda check and take your questions as I usually would. And we just have a ton of other news to get to, including a lot of unexpected results from round one of the playoffs here. We have the number 2 seed in the East going down in the Columbus Crew. That's pretty funny. I'm going to give you guys my reaction to that. We have Lionel Messi, Inter Miami, and the Barca boys getting pushed to Game 3 by Dax McCarty, Brad Guzan, and Atlanta United. That's also pretty funny. I'm going to give you my take on that. We got some MLS coaching updates as well. We have one MLS coaching legend back in the league, and then another MLS coaching legend leaving his club. So there's just there's a lot to talk about, both with Seattle advancing in the playoffs and the other results around the league, in addition to that coaching news. So let's get into it. Let's do it. But before I get into all that, I did want to let you all know that Lobbing Scorchers is a part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. If you want to get the best independent Seattle soccer coverage, consider supporting us by going to sounderatheart.com/ls. sounderatheart.com/ls. Scroll down to subscribe and support to get 30 days completely free. Every sign up through our link helps support and grow this show. Folks, if you enjoy the content, the number one best way you can support is go to sounderatheart.com/ls. Toss us a sub, and that would enable us to make even more of this content. The more of those subscriptions that we get. As always, thank you so much to everyone who's already done so. We can't read the list anymore; it's too long. But just know that we love and appreciate every single one of you. And also, if you haven't done so yet, do us a favor and toss us a sub on the Lobbing Scorchers YouTube. We're currently on the road to 650 still, which I find it a little annoying because we were on the road to 650 on the last episode, and I like to be on the new road by the time we record the next episode. So give us 5 YouTube subs out there to get us to 650. All right, I'm going to jump into this game review, but before we jump into the show, I did want to acknowledge at the top of the show what I feel like is I would call it the elephant in the room, which is that the host of The Apprentice has once again taken over the U.S. government, which, don't worry, this is not a political show. I've retired from political punditry, actually, after dabbling in it to varying degrees of success and popularity over the years. But I came to the conclusion that I don't have the bandwidth to be that guy. But what I did want to say in this situation, just, having seen how it goes the last time that we gave the host of The Apprentice control of the federal government, I don't expect it to go particularly well. And the message that I wanted to communicate is that anyone who is dealing with the ramifications or fallout from that, you always have a place of solace to come for respite in this community that we're creating. We welcome anyone and everyone from all walks of life, and I wish I had more to offer than that, but I kind of look at this as what I contribute to society in a way which feels pointless at times like this, or just when big current events happen, like the pandemic. I felt like it was kind of pointless making MLS content at that time too. But I actually had people tell me during the MLS is Back tournament that they really appreciated us for, covering those games, making content, and that it gave them a respite from all the turmoil going on. So if there's any way that this place that we're creating can be of that use to anyone out there, just know that we would welcome you with open arms. All right, that's really all I wanted to say about that. I'll get into the soccer stuff for you guys now. I know that's why you're here. We do have a dub pod. So, we do have to deal with the downfall of society, but got a playoff series dub pod. So at least there's that. Let's talk about this game 2 against the Houston Dynamo. Seattle going into this game, they were ahead 1-0 in the series, obviously, after winning game 1 in PKs on the 0-0 draw. Everyone was pretty underwhelmed with that result. I think it's safe to say Noah was seething mad. He was on the dub pod talking about how embarrassing it was. I was trying to calm him down, but he got unhinged, and he's not here to defend himself, so I can lambaste him for it. But I mean, I think he was right that the performance in that game 1 was, it was good enough to beat the Houston Dynamo in PKs in the first round. But I think the conclusion that we agreed on was that would not be a sufficient attacking performance to beat an LAFC or an LA Galaxy later on in the playoffs. So what I was really looking for going into this game was, hopefully a better performance offensively. But really, I do think the flip side of this, guys, is that in the playoffs, a win is a win, especially when it comes to a series win. I'm going to talk about it a little more in the other results, but was Seattle amazing or world-beating in this series? No, but they at least swept their series. They were only one of 2 teams, I think, to do that. The Galaxy were the only other one. Every other one went to a game 3. So, if you're underwhelmed by a scoreless draw, PK victory, followed by a 1-1 draw, PK victory, where you gave up the equalizer while the other team was down a man, fully within your rights to feel like that's not going to be sufficient later on in the playoffs. But, go ahead and go ask LAFC fans if they would take an underwhelming draw to advance right now as they gear up for Game 3 after losing to the Vancouver Whitecaps 3-0. Ask Inter Miami fans if they would have taken an ugly PK win to advance in that series instead of having to go home for Game 3, find themselves at risk of what would be a pretty embarrassing upset. Ask FC Cincinnati fans if they would take an ugly PK win after getting boat raced by NYCFC in their game 2. Seattle's actually in one of the better positions in the league right now as far as taking care of business in their round 1 series and just getting a break here to rest up, see who their opposition is going to be, LAFC or Vancouver, and get healthy and rested and then back in form and fit before that game. But let's talk about this Houston game itself and how Seattle closed off this series, because this really is the type of scenario that the Sounders have thrived in over the years. These high stakes elimination matches. This is when they're at their best, typically, or at least in the era where they were making MLS Cup every year and winning Champions League. So I was interested to see how this team would fare in this situation. Given the offensive struggles we've seen at times, but also, that's a good segue into the lineup reaction. Let's do the lineup reaction. There was so much going on with this lineup. Morris and Rusnak were both out, which I think it seemed precautionary to me, but they both were held out of this game, which I wasn't surprised by that. I thought they would be out, but the result was that you got a Rui Diaz start up top. But I thought the real interesting thing was you had CR10. We haven't had a CR10 appearance. Christian Roldan playing at the 10 in a while. It was CR10 with De La Vega and Paul Rothrock as your wingers, and then just your standard issue back line with Stephen Fry in goal and your Obed JP double pivot. I guess my first reaction when I saw that lineup was definitely, I took note of CR10, Christian Roldan being listed as the 10 as opposed to De La Vega. But I think that was a smart way to line it up just from the standpoint of Christian has shown he can be very effective in that position. He hasn't played it that much this year, but he has quite a bit in his career. And I think just given where they were at with the injuries, And with, De La Vega, I think you don't want to be moving him around at this point, probably. You probably want some consistency with his role. So tactically, I had no issues with the setup. And the game itself, I really thought, by and large, was a really good road playoff performance for Seattle. There are definitely things to nitpick, but overall, I thought the game management and the tempo control were really good. Sound at the back. It was a bit like pulling teeth on offense, but road games in the playoffs be like that sometimes. You have to be able to figure out some way, any way to win. Any way that you can win a game like this is a good way. There's no I don't deduct anything for an ugly win really on the road ever in MLS, but especially in the playoffs. But let's go over the key moments from the game. All right, the first one I think was actually the best one. This game was 0-0, and really I feel like there was not all that much of note offensively either way. There were some chances, some half chances, but it was definitely not like a high-octane back-and-forth transition warfare 0-0. Like this was like I said, it felt like a little like pulling teeth. But in the 66th minute, it really popped off when Hector Herrera, Houston Dynamo captain and superstar, Mexico international, got one of the craziest red cards I have ever seen for spitting in the direction of the referee. He committed a foul that I can't remember if it even got him like a yellow card, like if it was a tactical foul, but he disagreed with the ref's assessment that there was a foul on the play. And he did something that I don't think I've ever seen a player do this, which is that he kind of leaned towards the ref as he was walking away from the ref, and then he leaned back towards him, and he spit. He clearly spit. I saw him do it live on the broadcast, and then when they replayed it, it did pop into my mind. I was like, I mean, if the ref had seen that, he probably would have given him a red card. And then, the next place my mind went was, well, I mean, they have VAR that probably does look at something like that. Like if a ref doesn't see a flagrant act of dissent like that, they probably do radio that down to him. And I did think to myself in the moment, I was like, that really he clearly spit at him, and that could arguably, at least arguably, be a red card. And sure enough, VAR called on down, and Ache out of there with a lot of time left. Second straight game that the Dynamo get a red card in this series. They pretty much did everything they could to lose this series. And really, I think if there is a critique of Seattle in this series, it's that in both games when they had the man advantage, they did not take advantage of it to the degree that they needed to. They didn't score any goals in game one, and they did score in game two, to be fair, but not till the very end of the game, and then they gave up the equalizer, as we'll talk about later. So again, Seattle did get lucky in this series, and it's definitely fair to point out that given the advantages that the Houston Dynamo seemed insistent on giving Seattle by getting two really, really dumb red cards, like Carrasquilla's in game one was a really dumb red card too. And Ache's was just it's one of the crazier red cards I've ever seen. Not in terms of I've seen dirty tackles and plays like that are crazier, but just in terms of what must have been going through Ache's head in that moment. And the craziest part about it is they literally announced earlier today or yesterday that he's leaving the club, and this is their flagship player that they brought in a couple years ago, who's one of the best players in the league last year, and this year was slowed by injury a lot. But I mean, this is a 17 assist guy, and he's one of the best string pulling, tempo setting midfielders that I've watched in a while, outside of Busquets and the Inter Miami boys, who we disregard for discussions like this. But Ache is a very class player, decorated career, but he lost his head in that moment and got sent off in the 66th minute, which at that point, Seattle is once again, for a second straight playoff game, in a situation where it's if you don't finish it off, It's embarrassing because you've been given so much time. You've been given so much time up a man, and really it just seems like the Dynamo were kind of melting down. Benny O was not very happy. I'm not going to play the audio of the Benny O Red Blazing Hot press conference this week because I don't understand the technology required to do that. But rest assured, your Blazing Hot coach press conference of the week was Benny O after the game. Seattle got their one goal of the game, like I said, in the 87th minute. It was a really good goal, and I think it was a just reward for how they had been playing in the last few minutes while up a man. But really leading up to that, I think just without the Rusnak and Morris duo, with De La Vega still trying to make the type of impact that he was, what everyone hoped he would make going into the year. Rui Diaz up top in a year where he really hasn't been that productive at all outside the penalty spot and long-range Hail Marys all season. There's probably always going to be an element of this that was tough offensively. But once you go up a man, like, you want to be able to put it away there. Especially, it's different if they get the red card with like 5 minutes left. Like, you're not always going to be able to cash an opportunity in a time frame like that. But both of these red cards were so early in the second half. It was disappointing that they couldn't just put their foot on their neck a little more. But I did really like this goal. This goal had a Nuhu assist. None of the anti-Nuhu brigade really had much to say about the assist. They didn't like to point it out when he does something that contributes positively to the team. But Nuhu had a nice assist, low driven cross. Christian rolled on with a good finish. It looked like to me that he got that Steve Clark might have got screened by his own guy, and Christian was able to just place it to where he didn't know the shot was coming till it was already past him. So at that point, I think this is the other disappointing part about this game for Seattle is that, like any game, even when it's 11v11, if you score in the 87th minute to go up one goal, like, you've got to see that out without conceding the equalizer. And it's definitely a knock on this performance that Seattle couldn't do that. Houston down a man in the 93rd minute. They get an equalizer off. It was an unlucky own goal off Christian, but it's one of those situations that we talked a lot about earlier in the year where, like, you're putting yourselves in a situation to get unlucky when you kind of lose control of the game state when you're up a man that late in the game. Like, that's when you need to bear down and really, really try and minimize sequences like the one this goal came on, with the knowledge that, like, their season's on the line and they're going to be pushing for that leveler. But I think it definitely, the fact remains that to give up that equalizer was disappointing. The other, I forgot to write this down, but the other thing that I wanted to say about that was it did have me thinking about what we were talking about on the last show with the format. I was saying I don't necessarily mind the premise of a multi-game series in the first round, but I like the home and away aggregate scoring road goal system of old a lot better than a best of three, which I think is kind of weird. And the more I think about it, just like overly Americanized way of doing the playoffs. Like, I get that we're doing playoffs like as part of like it's the USA top flight, so you got to have playoffs. That I'm totally with. I'm totally with MLS Cup is the most important trophy, but I think the home and away aggregate format is better, and I think this series was a good example why. Because if this had been home and away on aggregate, then Seattle would have won outright on or they would have run on road goals, because Christian's goal would have had the series tie. It would have been tied on aggregate, and Christian's goal was a road goal. I think Seattle would have deserved to advance in that situation. So I don't know. I just like the home and away aggregate scoring better. If you got a different opinion on that, feel free to drop it in the comments, because there's definitely different schools of thought on the best format. The shootout again did not feature a lot of saved or missed penalties, but Stephen Fry was able to save one on Tate Schmidt, and Seattle sunk all of theirs. So it's on to the semis, where they are going to face off with either LAFC or the Vancouver Whitecaps, who have pushed LAFC to a game 3. So LAFC could go out. I don't expect that will happen. But we're going to talk about how badly they got worked in their game 2. It was interesting. It was interesting. Not only did they not win that game 2, they were non-competitive in that game 2. So I think it's worth talking about, like, even if LAFC wins this Vancouver series, which I do expect them to, are they as infallible as it may seem? I think most people would probably say Seattle has no chance to beat them specifically, but I'm talking about, like, in the greater scope of the playoffs, like, how much of a real contender are they? I mean, after seeing that game against the Whitecaps, I mean, I don't know what I think about that. I'm gonna have to see how they respond to that, because that was bad. But anyway, got off on a tangent there. I'll hit my rapid fire takeaways from this game that I wrote down, which was, again, I already touched on this, but this was an ugly win, giving up the equalizer at the end, not capitalizing on being up a man generally over both games. Those are all ugly components to this series. But like I said, in the playoffs, the ends justify the means. Advancing at all costs is all that matters. And I mean, again, if you think that you are entitled to win a series like this or advance past a team like the Dynamo that you consider inferior but was relatively similar to you on the table, you're not. Inter Miami have the greatest MLS roster ever assembled, and they didn't sweep their series. Atlanta United beat them straight up in game 2. LAFC, we've talked a lot all year about how LAFC in the head-to-head matchups have demonstrated a level that Seattle just simply does not seem to be on, and how important closing that gap is. Well, I mean, they got boat raced in their game 2 against the Whitecaps. It was 3-0. Scottish Messi looked like real Messi against LAFC at BC Place. FC Cincinnati, another team that I think most Sounders fans and prognosticators at large would say is a better side than Seattle right now, boat raced in their game 2. They have to go to an elimination game. The Columbus Crew. Guys, the Columbus Crew season is over. It's over. They lost to the New York Red Bulls. They lost to the 7th seed as the 2 seed, which, that happens in the MLS playoffs. But this crew team was literally, I think most people realize that this Inter Miami team is the most stacked MLS team of all time. But people were talking about this Columbus team like it was this generational team. They won MLS Cup last year and they won Leagues Cup this year. So they have a good trophy haul to back that up. There's no doubt about that. The Crew have a seat at the elite club table in the league, without a doubt. I still believe that. But they really fell flat in the Red Bull series. And I think the sheer amount of games, the volume of games that Columbus had to play this year had a lot to do with that. I'm pretty sure, like, if they had played like even a slightly more regular schedule than they ended up playing with all the competitions they were playing in this year, maybe they do better in the playoffs, but they're done. I mean, their season's over. So if you want to critique Seattle's performance in this Houston series, by all means, I just did. There was a lot of stuff that could have and should have been better, and it shouldn't have been as difficult as they made it. But they're the only team, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think it was the Galaxy who swept their series, and that was it. So I don't know. I think that's just worth pointing out. Also, just the CR10 thing. Christian is a beast for that. Like, he's been played all over the field this year, whether it was at right mid originally, the double pivot, right back a lot. I don't know if there had been a CR10 game this year. There have been a lot in like previous years. When the year that Nico missed all that time with injury, I feel like there's a lot of CR10, and then also just earlier in his career, when they had injuries in the attack, they would play him there, and it's just I think he's I had a take on this on a previous show, but I think he's the most versatile player in MLS right now, as far as like you can plug him in anywhere on the field, and he's going to do it at a high level, and for him to get a goal in this game, that goal is the reason that they advanced through, because otherwise it's 1-0 Dynamo, if you grant that the Dynamo were going to score a goal in the game. So CR10 is a club legend. All right, I'm going to get into the agenda check now. I got 3 written down, one of which is a new one that I'm excited for you guys to hear, 2 of which are is stuff that we've talked about ad nauseum. So I'm gonna do those. I'll do the two old ones first, and then I'll unveil the new agenda for you guys. But first, I'll talk about the De La Vega is a bust agenda. I consider that unchanged. I feel like I was pretty clear on the status of it is unchanged. I was pretty clear on the last show that I still think the sample size and the injury issues they just create a situation where you can't really make a full evaluation yet. I understand everybody wants to, and the sample size has reached a point at this juncture that people feel like you can make a definitive call. I really don't. Like, I look at this as at just the pure number of minutes. If a guy's in the like 300 to 500 minute range, like De La Vega is right now, that is just not a big enough sample size to judge anything, good or bad. So I'm going to try and stay patient with this, even though I think everyone, including us, were correct to critique how the performance in game 1 seemed to backslide, and just in general, like, I think everyone knows at this point what it would mean for this team's ceiling if he can break out, and I think that's why everyone's hinging on it so bad. But like, for now, I'm not gonna say he's a bust. I'm not gonna say he's not a bust. I want 1,000 to 1,200 minutes before I start to formulate a final take on that. The new Who Can't Cross agenda. Tough week for that one. That was I mean, I'm being a little facetious here, but that was legitimately it was a nice cross. It was a nice cross. Here's the new agenda. Here's the new agenda that I think might be a little fun one to start kicking around. I call this one the Stephen Fry is the MLS GOAT goalkeeper over Nick Rimando agenda. Nick Rimando has been considered the MLS GOAT goalkeeper for as long as I have obsessively followed the league, and totally rightfully so, like in terms of just the stalwart he was for Real Salt Lake, how many years he did it at such a high level. Man, honestly, watching him in person at Lumen Field all those years when Real Salt Lake would come to town, he was actually like incredible to watch. It wasn't just the highlight reel saves that he would make, which he made a lot. It was like it was the timing of him. He was a super clutch player, however much you believe in that. He would come up with these crazy saves for them time and again in the biggest moments. So I think it's not, this agenda is not about his status as the GOAT to this point being undeserved. But I just feel like when you consider the run that Fry's had in the trophy case, that he's been the starting goalkeeper for the entire trophy case pretty much, except for a couple of the early Open Cups. But really, since the 14 Open Cup Shield season, he's been the starter in goal for every major trophy that they've won, including Champions League. So he's got a Shield, he's got an Open Cup, he's got 2 MLS Cups, he's got an MLS Cup MVP, and he's got a Champions League where he made Champions League Best 11 and was a key part of the Sounders winning that. So I don't know, man. I don't know if you can tell me Rimando's credentials are better than that drop them in the YouTube comments if you think so. I'd be curious to hear people's takes on this debate. All right, that's it for agenda check. Let's get into your questions because there's more De La Vega discussion to be had here. I pulled a couple of the new De La Vega takes. So let's get into it. I pulled this one from YouTube. This is from Christ Bro. Just in general, I crowdsource these on Twitter, but I do read the YouTube comments as well. So if you've ever got a take or a question or an agenda that you want to toss our way, feel free to drop them on YouTube, and I might put them up here. If it's good though, it's got to be a good point. If it's a stupid point, I'm not going to read it. But Christ Bro made some interesting points here. He says, as much as Pedro had a terrible game, and I get wanting to bench him, he had like 5 very solid performances prior, and his best one in a Sounders shirt against Portland 2 games ago. Georgie also doesn't provide end product either. He has 1 goal that was off his kneecaps from a half yard out because the ball bounced perfectly his way, but he also terribly mishits strikes and crosses too. We just don't care because he doesn't have the same expectations as De La Vega. However, Pedro is definitely the more talented player, and his mistakes last game are incredibly coachable. If I'm Brian Schmetzer, I would roll him back out to show him he backs him. It helps Jordan get out of a miserable 15-game slump, and look where he finished. All right, yeah, so that was a long one, but thank you for that comment. I wanted to highlight this one because there's points in here that I agree with and points in here that I disagree with. I'll start with the one that I disagree with, which is the whole point about, Georgie doesn't provide end product either, and discrediting the goal because it was off his kneecaps from half a yard out, and the service was perfect, blah blah blah. So the goal doesn't count because it was an easy goal, it was a poacher goal argument. I just don't subscribe to that at all. A poached goal like that, like the one that Georgie scored against the Whitecaps in that game, is end product. Finding those positions to have high percentage, easy poached finishes is a skill that all good goal scorers have. That is end product. And I think he has... you're totally right, Christ Bro, that Georgie doesn't really provide the end product either. I'm just saying, in recent weeks, I would point to that goal as evidence that he's displayed more of it than De La Vega. A goal like that, where it's about just like positioning and making it as easy as possible, that's what you want from your attacking players as much as you can get those goals. Now, to be fair, as a counterpoint to my counterpoint, De La Vega has scored 2 really good goals that both got waved off on like very, very minor, like offside and like obstruction technicalities. But he scored on the shots. One of them was a really great shot in Leagues Cup. That would have been Golazo, and it was criminal that didn't count. But then also like a post one, exactly like the one that Georgie scored. Remember that one in Portland? People forget about that one, but like he's offside by 0.2 centimeters. But that type of goal had what I was talking about with that positioning and that, creating end product for yourself through like smart movement and finding those high percentage looks. If Georgie has done, he did that on that goal, but I do think it's fair to point out that, okay, like De La Vega had one exactly like that too. It just got waved off by 0.2 centimeters. So I get that. But I guess, I think the allure of Georgie right now is just the excitement of the unknown, and there's a lot of consternation about the De La Vega thing right now. So maybe that's where I was coming from a little bit. But anyway, those are well thought out points. I did like that comment, even if I don't necessarily agree with the whole premise of denying Georgie credit for the goal. Ryan Shane had another take on this. He said, I think the criticism of Pepo De La Vega is too harsh. I know that players open themselves to constructive criticism given their profession, but at some point we have to get behind our players, especially young kids who are visibly trying and working hard. Like y'all said, he's got promise. He's just had some serious setbacks. Sad face. You got to feel for the guy. And yeah, no, that's a good comment, Ryan. And I try to make this clear every time we talk about this, but it's really like none of the critiques that I've had of De La Vega are anything against him, like as a kid or even like as a player yet. Like I've said that I think it's way too early to make a final judgment on him yet. But I'm coming in from the perspective of what gives Seattle the best chance to make a run this season. And if his fitness and end product is still at a place where it's just a work in progress to the point where he can't contribute to the team at a high level, and in like, I think there's honestly, I think he would even acknowledge this. There's a case to be made that in the game 1 against Houston, he was like actively detrimental with how just off it seemed, in terms of his combining with the other players and how he was hitting passes and stuff. So it's just, that's why the Georgie thing is such a debate, you know. It's I fully like believe that there's a not crazy outlandish scenario where he has an off season to recharge, get healthy. He comes back next year fit and finally comes good on the promise and potential that we've seen. But like, you have to, right now, you got to make your lineup decisions and your calculations on this stuff based on what's going to like help you win in the playoffs. So that's where it becomes a discussion. So again, I would be interested to hear what all of y'all think about that. Cody says we are going to get destroyed by LAFC. Yeah, maybe. Like I've been saying the same thing based on how the head-to-heads went this year. But LAFC just got, guys, if you didn't watch this game, go watch the highlights of what Scottish Messi did to LAFC. It was disgusting. It was disgusting. They found Scottish Messi is tired of the Whitecaps' own storyline of constantly losing to LAFC. So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think it's outlandish that the Whitecaps win that series. They got LAFC a little rattled, I think. LAFC's, I consider them a pretty unflappable group, but Scottish Messi had them flapped. They were flappable. Matty B says, what do we need to do to capitalize on playing teams a man down? The subs look good, but it just wasn't potent enough. Also, Nuhu did that bit again. Shout out Noah. I'm not sure what the Nuhu bit and shout out Noah was. I thought we were going to be recording this together, so I was going to let him explain it. But not sure about that reference. But yeah, I mean, as far as what do we need to do to capitalize on teams playing down a man? Okay, I think in general, like this offense without the Rusnak-Morris stack, like where do you go? Rui Diaz, that's like, if he scores a goal at this point, that's like a statistical anomaly. I don't even remember the last time that happened. De La Vega, we've talked about that ad nauseum. Paul Rothrock, yes, like he can be your source of goals, but like you can't. We talked about this on the very first episode ever of Lobbing Scorchers. If your entire attack is predicated on Paul Rothrock, you probably are going to need other sources of production eventually. You know, you can never rely on just one guy, but if it's Paul Rothrock or bust, you're not always going to be able to score when you're up a man. So really, like, I think the takeaway from Maddie's question is just that this team needs the Morris-Rusnak duo to be healthy, fit, and in form to make a run first and foremost, because that's, I mean, to me, that duo is the centerpiece of pretty much the entire offense when you throw in Paul Rothrock. But yeah, Robert says, should Andrew Thomas be subbed in to take PKs? I don't feel as passionate about this as some of you apparently do. I think, like, as I understand it, Thomas is considered better specifically on PKs than Fry. But they just won 2 shootouts with Fry, although He only made one save across those two shootouts, and a common criticism of Fry in his career is that he's not good, like proficient enough at saving penalties. I tend to think of penalties as like pretty random, unless you're Tim Melia. Tim Melia is like the one guy who has this like weirdly high percentage of penalties that he's saved. But I think you're kind of just at the mercy of the gods. Like I don't think like what goalkeeper is in there, whether they're considered better at penalties or not, makes like as big a difference as people might think. All right. I did want to talk a little bit more about these other results. I know I already hit on a lot of them already. I couldn't help myself. But there was just a lot of interesting stuff that went on in round one here. Like I said, the Columbus Crew are out. And again, I think that reinforces the point that I was making earlier. Like at this level, at a top flight level, like you're not entitled to, like in tournament soccer, you're never entitled to results to begin with, even if you're the higher seed, even if you're the more talented team. But in a league like MLS with the salary cap and the parity, like you can think that you're way better than another team and you can get got. Anyone can get got. And this just shows that. Did anyone pick the Red Bulls to beat the Crew? No. Red Bulls were a very mid team this year. They look solid to sometimes above average when Emil Forsberg's playing, but I consider them a very standard average MLS team. They knocked out a Columbus team that many, including myself, considered to be one of the best MLS teams of the last 4 or 5 years, and some people consider them one of, if not the best teams of this last era. You know, there's you can debate LAFC in that, depending on how far you go back. Like Seattle is in there. Obviously, what Inter Miami is doing, FC Cincinnati has climbed into that discussion in recent years. But point is, this Columbus team is an elite team in the league right now, and they're out of there. Also, I do think. I do want to revel in the Schadenfreude a little bit of, you know, there was the whole dispute earlier this year of when Seattle destroyed Columbus because their goalkeeper got a red card and they didn't have a backup, so Sean Zawatsky had to play goalkeeper. That was funny, but a lot of the city of Columbus were not happy with Lobbing Scorchers for the episode that we recorded about that. So now that they're out of the playoffs, I say again, get wrecked, get bammed on, get a backup goalkeeper. This Inter Miami getting pushed to game 3 too is just further reinforces that. They literally have four of the top like 13 to 15 players who have ever played the game, including the literal number one best player that has ever played the game. Arguably the best defensive midfielder that has ever played the game. I think a lot of people hold Sergio Busquets in that high regard. I think Jordi Alba is certainly the best attacking fullback, or one of the best attacking fullbacks to ever play the game. I certainly think Luis Suarez is, I don't know, people disagree with me on this. I think he's one of the top 5 to 10 strikers to ever play the game. I think he is, both in terms of raw production and skill level. So you have that team. I don't even know why I just explained it. Everyone knows what's going on with that team. Playing an Atlanta United team they're actively bad. They're actively bad. And they squeaked into the playoffs and have now pulled off this. It was a good win. They got a late goal, 2-1 win. They got the dub. If Inter Miami got knocked out by Atlanta United, that would be funny. It would totally undermine all my takes about how they're going to steamroll the MLS Cup, but I don't care. Like, I do think it would be fun to see Messi deeper into the playoffs. I think it would be funnier if Messi lost to this Atlanta United team that is not good. LAFC, again, man, like this game was not close. It wasn't close. The Whitecaps were all over them all night. LAFC, they might be in trouble. I don't think that result is indicative of their quality or like where they stand right now at all. I still think they're LAFC. But I think like losing on the road is one thing. That in itself, I will probably, if they had just lost a normal competitive game on the road, I don't think I would think much of it. I would think it's just like a random fluke result and they're going to absolutely destroy the Whitecaps in the next game. But the nature of this result is what made me pause a little bit. The scoreline, but just how one-sided it was from the run of play. It made me feel like there might be fatigue going on with this LAFC team that I think we also saw with Columbus. Those are two teams that have just played a lot of soccer the last couple of years. That does catch up to you. Every team at a certain point. Even LAFC. Like, I know we joke about how Denny Bwanga like doesn't get tired and plays every single game. It is going to catch up to you at some point. Maybe it is for LAFC. I doubt it, but it's possible. It's possible. FC Cincinnati again got destroyed by NYCFC, and they're so injured this year that I don't think there's as much, if anything, to read into where FC Cincinnati's at. But it did make both mine and Noah's upset predictions. We had that upset look a little better, and that was a really one-sided game. NYCFC won that easily, and I'm hoping they go on because I liked that pick, and I kind of like NYCFC's team. I think they're a pretty young and fun team. The LA Galaxy looked like the best team in the playoffs so far, and it's the LA Galaxy podcast, but this was an even more one-sided series than I thought it would be. I thought it would be. I picked them to win it. Obviously, I have LA Galaxy going to MLS Cup, and they've been my favorite team in the league to watch all year. But this, even by those standards, they absolutely destroyed the Colorado Rapids 4-1 in Game 2. Won that series by a combined score of 9-1, I believe. I think the first game in LA was 5-0. So the Galaxy, they rolled through that series. It'll get harder as they get deeper into the playoffs, but I feel pretty good about that MLS Cup pick right now. And I also feel good about my take that I had to previously rescind, that the Galaxy, I rated the Galaxy over LAFC. It didn't age particularly well. LAFC took the number 1 seed from them on the last day of the season, decision day. But now I feel kind of good about that take again. So there you go. And then Minnesota United beat RSL in PKs, which I think was the biggest snoozer of a series. And I really don't think this holds much significance at all, in the sense that RSL had been fading for a while. They were one of the better teams in the league the first half of the year. Didn't really hear much about him again in the second half of the year. Chicho Arango got injured at one point, I think, stopped scoring. Diego Luna is an awesome player. He's probably the reason to still watch their team with Chicho injured or not producing. But he's not ready to like carry an entire club to an MLS Cup yet. So RSL got hit with a little dose of reality, not just in the playoffs, but really whole second half of the year. And Minnesota United, they look a lot more interesting since Kelvin Yeboah got here. I'm excited to watch him for a full season next year to see what he can do. But I think, to me, when I look at Minnesota's roster, like, I feel like they need to, they have like a good foundation, they have a good start, but they need to build it out a little bit more to be a real contender. So maybe they get hot and make a run, but based on how they looked in this RSL series, I didn't really see much to indicate that. All right. I had 3 other headlines I wanted to hit before I get out of here for this little solo pod on episode 73. I'm going to keep this one to, looking like I'm going to come in at under an hour here, which I think is pretty good for a solo pod. I can't do the 90-minuters that Noah and I do, so we'll keep this one shorter tonight. First headline, just real quick, Diego Luna, who I was just talking about, segue that. He has been named your Young Player of the Year, and Lewis Morgan also won Comeback Player of the Year, which I think that's who I voted for. I was torn between Lewis Morgan and Maxi Morales, but I think I voted for Lewis Morgan because Maxi didn't play as much as him, and Lewis Morgan was an integral part of a playoff team all year and came back from like 2 or 3 injuries last year. So congrats to Diego Luna and Lewis Morgan. This coaching news, this is some of the biggest news of the day, though. You have Bruce Arena, who unceremoniously exited his most recent post as the manager of the New England Revolution, hired by the San Jose Earthquakes. Bruce is back. Bruce is back in the league after his little scandal in New England, which it really never came out exactly what happened with that. I really don't know. I've heard things, but nothing that I would want to report or like divulge because I don't have it confirmed or anything. But I can't speak to whether it's like the right or wrong decision to have him back in the league because we don't know what happened. Don't know what happened. So as far as all that goes, I don't know. But it does seem like as far as name value and like pedigree within the league, this is about as high profile a hire, I guess, as an MLS club can make. Like, I think what Bruce does is he gives you a floor is what he does. Like, if you give Bruce his time to make his mark on any MLS club, he'll have you. I mean, like, when he got to the Revs, they were down horribly bad. Robert Kraft hired him to like rescue their franchise, and Bruce had them winning the Shield and stuff. So I guess what I'm curious about is if he can pull that magic with a club that just gave up 76 goals. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm also thinking that the Quakes might be less of like as bad as they've been like entertainingly bad, if that makes sense, in the last couple years. Maybe not this year. They were mostly just terrible, but like the Almeida teams, Matias Almeida is what I'm talking about, when they were just like run and gun with the man marking and the counterattacking and stuff. Like they're just kind of chaos merchants. I'm interested. Bruce he's not a chaos merchant type of coach. So I guess I'm curious if like it changes their whole club identity, because even after the Almeida era, like under Lucci, they still had that same kind of vibe. But I don't know if it was by design or not. So that's what I'll be keeping tabs on with Bruce Arena going to the Quakes. It makes sense if you think about it, because he used to coach the Galaxy. He's got a lot of California connections. So, but it is interesting too, because he's a legendary Galaxy coach, right? Now it's like Cali Classico rivals. So that's a good storyline. And then the other one, Jim Curtin, Jim C, out in Philly. Now this is one, well, first of all, Sounders assistant. But in all seriousness, this was a surprise around the league, because this is one of, if not the longest. Peter Vermees is the longest tenured, but I think Jim C is the second longest tenured manager in all of MLS. And I won't lie, when I first heard that the Union were getting rid of Jim C, my first thought was that's dumb. That's dumb, because Jim C is a provenly good coach who has consistently had this Union team punching above their weight for years and years. They famously are one of the biggest, they're definitely the most successful like pure Moneyball team in the league that really doesn't spend that much at all. And they have excellent scouting and ways of finding like market inefficiency. It's literally like they literally have some Moneyball thing going on with that club to have the success that they've had over the last few years. Like they had a year where they put up like a crooked goal differential that was like the year they made MLS Cup in 2022. They had like a plus 40 something goal differential that year with, it's got to be like the lowest spending to largest goal differential I've ever seen. And Ernst Tanner, their sporting director, you got to give him a lot of the credit for that too. But like Jim C, he's always struck me as like, we talk a lot about man managing with Brian Schmetzer and how that's an elite skill of his, and that's what makes him a great coach more than like being the guy who's going to out tactic you. Jim C, I think you could say a similar thing. He's widely known as like an awesome, great, really nice guy, which doesn't always equate to a great coach. But if you talk to any player who's played for him, which I have, they all talk about what a great man manager he is and what a great like culture builder he is. And it's a big reason why the Union have had the success that they've had along with Ernst Tanner. And the thing in these situations is that the grass is not always greener. Like, what are the actual odds you upgrade on an MLS coach from Jim C? Doesn't seem especially high. I mean, you could take a big swing and have a knock it out of the park higher. But when you have like a club legend type of coach who admittedly the Union had a very down year, but you have a long track record of winning and success to fall back on if you wanted to bring him back. Now, all of that being said, I do understand the flip side of sometimes, I mean, we saw this happen with Ziggy towards the end of his tenure in Seattle. Like sometimes like an era just runs its course and a coach's messaging either gets stale or it's just time. And without knowing the specifics of the situation and not really having many contacts inside the organization, I don't really have a concept of how much of Jim C's exit was them feeling like the team underperformed to an unacceptable level this year and that had to do with coaching, or how much of it was just like he'd been there since second longest tenured manager in the league, been there since 2013 or 2014. So maybe there's a mutual agreement that, okay, like it's been a decade plus, we've had a great run, won a lot of games, had some great seasons, didn't win anything, choked a lot of trophies, but it's gone about as far as we can take it. Like now we need to hire a coach who is going to take us to the level past that. But the thing is, man, like I think for the Philly Union to ascend, they need to stop moneyballing. And I think their fans are there. During the years where they were moneyballing and putting up a plus 48 goal differential, it was chill. But when you have a year you're like they just had, you might have to go splash some cash, man. Might have to go splash some cash. All right, I'm pulling up just about on an hour here. An hour solo pod is quite a lot, so I'm going to call it right there. Thank you all so much for bearing with me on this solo pod, episode 73. It's not the easiest thing to just talk to myself here for an hour straight. But I had to get this dub pod out. With everything that's happened in the playoffs and all that. So, yeah. Thank you all so much, as always, for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, rate 5 stars, write us a review, sub to the YouTube, sub to our other socials. We got TikTok and Instagram that like no one follows. So yeah, go follow the Lobbing Scorchers TikTok and Instagram. And again, like I said earlier, if you find yourself struggling with the host of The Apprentice's autocratic takeover of the U.S. government, and you could use an escape from that, and our content can provide that in any way. That's what I hope to provide. That's it. Gonna call it right there. Thank you all again so much for listening. Until next time, We out. Peace.